Good morning, everyone. Good morning to all my wonderful audience. Thank you so much for joining our sessions again and giving us that kind of inspiration to keep going with our sessions again and again. We are back with our next session for the week 4th. This is session number 7, and which we will be talking about how you have to handle incident management responses using AWS native services. We'll have our speaker today, Raji. She delivered a talk yesterday also around compliances, which is her expertise. She will again be joining us today for our session, and we'll talk about how she deal in different scenarios, what are the different AWS services that can help us to automate and help more of to handle this incident management and responses. Before we go ahead and I invite Raji to the stage, let me quickly highlight to all our speakers and appreciate for the time they are investing to help us to organize this event, right? Talking about to all the speakers, they are literally spending their weeks to help us to organize the content, the quiz, and hosting the sessions from their valuable bandwidth. So I kudos to all the speakers and I appreciate their bandwidth. Again, as I have said a lot about our community partners, this would not be possible if we all would not have come again under one umbrella and help us to host this entire series. So I want to really call out and appreciate to all our community partners. AWS is a group Nasik, AWS is a group Indore, AWS is a group Rajkot, AWS is a group Dehradun, and as well as to our external community partners, UPSC CSA, CNCF Thani, and our DevOps community. I would really request if you are nearby to any of this area, please do join these user groups. Or if you are based out of Mumbai, do join AWS user groups. Or there are other partners, so you will learn and get a chance to network with them. And as I mentioned in the yesterday's session, we have announced last week a different other contest as a part of the series, which is more to ensure the learning which you have got from this event, how you summarize that learning in form of a GitHub blog, GitHub page, Medium blog, Dev2, or a LinkedIn blog. Post that learning across your peers, across your community, right? So they also learn in case if they are not able to join. A very novel idea and very initiative, right, from AWS User Group Mumbai. I would really request, please do participate and start writing the blogs. The folks who have the authentic content and been consistently posting the blogs about different sessions will get an interesting reward in our finale session, which is just out 2 weeks. So still, it's not too late. You can participate. All of our sessions are already been recorded in an on-demand form on YouTube channel. I'll share the playlist link along in the chat itself. So please do register and write the blogs. I'm really looking forward to read a couple of your blogs. Again, as I've mentioned, we are active in all different social media platforms: LinkedIn, Slack, Meetup, Twitter, Insta, WhatsApp, right? Please do join, subscribe, follow us so you are stay tuned about the different events, what we do, as well as you're aware about our next session, as well as our finale session. So please do subscribe right today. With that, we are to our today's session, which is threat detection and incident response using AWS Cloud Native Services. We'll understand about different services, how we can achieve threat detection and incident response in automated fashion. The speaker is very renowned. She just delivered a talk yesterday as a part of our series, Raji, and as I mentioned, she's an active speaker when it comes to security, compliances, governance, risk, as well as she's an AWS ambassador, and she has also been a reinvent mainstream speaker. So let me invite Raji to the stage. Hey Raji, good morning. How are you doing today?
Hi Sanchit, good morning. Pleasure to be here. And thank you so much to the audience to take out some time on Sunday and attend this session. Yeah, so I'm looking forward to it. And we'll have an interactive session. Let's keep it as interactive as possible. Wherever you want to share your comments, put it in your chat window. And today's session, especially, it's going to. I have tried to make it more engaging and more fun. We will have quizzes in between. We will have riddles. So stay tuned. Let me
Thank you.
know, Sanchit, if I can.
Thank you, Raji, for again, obviously, thank kudos to our audience for, as Raji also mentioned, for spending time from their weekend. But yeah, I would really appreciate Raji for you also, right? Giving a talk back to back on Saturdays and Sundays is not an easy job, right? You have to prepare the content, deliver it, prep, right? So kudos to your effort that you took out time and helping our community to understand how exactly you can do it, right? So thank you so much.
It's my pleasure, Sanchit. And yeah, the talks are always motivating. It's an opportunity for me to learn as well. And learning from the audience has been a lot of fun, especially for me when we exchange ideas in such sessions. It's a great learning experience. I'm looking
Exactly,
forward
spot
to
on.
it.
That's exactly what community is all about. That you learn from both the ends, right? So spot
Yes.
on. Yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think your screen is up. Best of luck.
Yeah.
You're good to
Okay.
go ahead. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Sanchit. Again, good morning, everyone. So today we are going to talk on a very interesting topic, incident response, and how do we make the teams ready, and how do we make them face the emerging cyber attacks? Because this one specific area within the cyber security has been the most active. Every day, literally every week, we see some cyber attack or the other, or sometimes it's a ransomware attack, or some ethical hacker would have compromised into a business and would just demand money, and so on. So it nowadays it's becoming a topic of concern for the senior leadership as well. So a lot of focus has been given as to how do we make our IT systems resilient to these cyber attacks. And what we are going to talk today is about how do we build this capability within the teams, and more importantly, how do we leverage cloud and its capabilities to build this competency on incident response. So, if you look at incident response, it's not a one man or one woman army. It's a team. It's a teamwork. So, how do we, as a team, respond to the changes that happens in the market, in the external world? And it's not necessary that we have to wait for an incident. That's a very bad approach. We should always be proactive, because it's not the matter of how, it's just a matter of when. Because no matter how many ever security guardrails, security tools, products you build in, nobody will claim that they are 100% secure with confidence. There will be scenarios where things can go wrong, things can get compromised. So just because we have all the tools in the world, or just because our architecture is certified by someone, or it is audited by someone, it does not mean that we can relax and peacefully sit. So we need to build teams who have the capability, who have the mechanism to face if things go wrong in the future. So how do we do that is what we are going to see today. So it's about building unwavering resilience, right? So even if something happens, how do we get back our business into action as fast as possible? And it's a teamwork, so it's a collection of people's capabilities which gets into action. And this is my one of my personal analogy of an incident response team is to the Avengers. So everyone would have seen Avengers movie. And in the private chat window, please do share what characteristic you like from any of your favorite characters from Avengers. So meanwhile, let me tell you why I feel incident response team is nothing closer to an Avenger team, right? So it's a combination of various capabilities. Like, you should have a good forensic expert. So in the team, you should have one or two, at least one or two, as people who are good in back tracing, who are good in paying attention to detail, who are good at collecting evidences, and they are able to trace back and boil down to what went wrong, or to boil down to the compromised system. So that's a detective mindset that we need to have within the team. So that's the forensic expert. Network engineers. So again, Networking plays a crucial role because you have to isolate systems when they are under attack. So networking is one of the key skill required, and of course security analyst. So it's not just doing the engineering work or not just doing the developer work. You should be able to see the larger picture. You should be able to analyze what went wrong. You should quickly bring in tools to gather the data and to create an insight out of it, and to look at the larger picture. And of course, there should be someone to orchestrate these activities, which is nothing but the incident response manager, and more importantly, threat intelligence analyst. So this is the person who will be constantly looking at what is happening in the outside world, because we do have a tendency, when we get busy with our day-to-day work, we lose track of what is happening in the cyber world. So there will be some new vulnerability found, or there might be some new malware released, and we should also be constantly aware of the cyber attacks which are happening in other organizations, so that we get ready, we get well prepared. So that's the role of a threat intelligence analyst. All right. So this is incident response to you from a technical standpoint. So it's a combination of people. We saw now what sort of skill sets we need, and then there is also a certain process which needs to be brought in. There are documentations that needs to be produced. You need to be ready with run books and playbooks, which I'll show you some samples. And of course, without the tools, without the right security products, it's not possible to put these people or the process into action. So that's what technology plays a role. So when you look at technology, what sort of tools we need? So we need good detection tools. We call it as MDR, EDR tools. And we need SIEM for sure. SIEM is Security Information Events Management. So whenever, as events keep happening, event is any action which keeps happening, we need to be first of all aware of those events. If there are people accessing some data stores, we need to know what data stores they are accessing, when they are accessing. If there is an attempt made to get into a database, but a user is getting access denied, error for some reason in the production system, then definitely it is something which the team needs to know. It could be a genuine attempt, but we need to know. We need to first make sure that it's really a genuine attempt. So we need to have complete visibility into every action that takes place, and that's where SIEM tools will help us. And analytics. So these days, in every security team, we also find a data analyst, because it's not just security configurations or knowing how to use the tools anymore. Because of the amount of data which is increasing on a day-to-day basis, there is a need to combine machine learning capabilities along with the security capabilities. So there is a lot of scope to build machine learning models, data analytics, visualizations, and tools on top of the security data. So that's at a high level on the tools that we need. So before I get on to the ground, I do have certain other analogies which I have brought in for you. So in our earlier slide, we saw Security Operations Center, which was under the people umbrella. Security Operations Center plays a key role in incident response. In fact, without a SOC, it's not possible to even claim that we are ready for a cyber event. So this is like a command center where we will have real-time insight into what is happening among the security systems, not just security systems, anything within our IT systems. Which application is getting more vulnerabilities? Are there any infrastructure components which are not patched? Or who are the latest 5 users who have joined the organization? And is the authentication process completed for those users? What are the top 5 vulnerabilities which are there currently in our organization? So there is something called a CISO dashboard. This is one of the important component in a security operations center. So it has various parameters which comes in a single dashboard, and you will be able to see the critical measures of the security posture of your organization. So this is nothing like a command center which the Iron Man and Avengers movie has. So that much capable should be our SOC system, SOC center. And every organizations do some SOC in it would either be a small or a medium or a large level. Some organizations have shared teams. Some organizations have teams who are geographically located in a particular location. It's up to them. So we have to see where the users are, and accordingly the SOC centers have to be established. Forensic analyst is something which I wanted to bring into your attention, because this skill is very much required. Traditionally, this was not paid that much attention, but looking at where cyber world is moving into, having a detective mindset, and collecting the evidences and back tracing, and then looking at the various clues. So why this skill set is important is there have been cases where people generally have a template in mind. So for example, if there is a database which is under ransomware, so assume there is a hacker who has compromised S3 bucket, and people generally will have a template in their mind that, okay, the bucket would have been publicly available. Maybe someone leaked their access key, secret key, and that's how the hacker got into. But these days, those traditional methods are no longer being used by hackers. Hackers are also evolving. They are also using machine learning tools. They are also using advanced hacking tools to gain entry into the system. So we have to look at the complete picture. We also have to look at things which are not commonly the root cause of a compromise. So you need a out of the box thinker, somebody who does not follow templates, someone who will look at the least possible cause, and who has the mindset to backtrace things, and who gives importance to the little details which we generally might oversee. And yeah, so coming to the technology part. So now that we know what sort of skill set is required, what are the components of an incident response team, this is how AWS and many organizations have put up a view as to how incident response has to be established. So at a broad level, there are 4 phases in an incident response. So one is getting prepared for the cyber attack, right, or cyber event. So what preparation? The first box that you see is the preparation. So this is the foundation part. This talks about what services, what capabilities you need to bring in. So if we talk in terms of the AWS cloud language, this is about enabling AWS services, the bare minimum AWS services. For example, we should have CloudTrail enabled. We should have CloudWatch enabled. And if we are using firewalls, then they should have their firewall logging enabled. Wherever we are using load balancer logging has to be brought in. So there are a set of uh, uh, AWS services or even third-party products if the organization is using, which needs to be enabled and brought into action. So that's about preparation. And the next is the detection. So using these capabilities, how do we detect? So if there is some event, how do we use CloudTrail? How do we use CloudWatch? And how do we use these tools to respond to a certain type of event? So, for example, if the root cause or of the event is a credential compromise, then there should be certain way in which we do the detection. Now, I cannot apply the same method if there is a compromise in S3 bucket. If for that I will use a different set of action, right? So the way we detect also depends on the kind of event that we are exposed to. So this is a reactive approach, and we should also do a proactive approach, right? So we should not wait until a cyber event happens. We proactively have to create dashboards. We have to create visibility, and these dashboards should detect the parameters. I spoke about the top 10 vulnerabilities, or the latest employee, 5 employees who joined the organization. So these are the dashboards which typically SOC will have. So these detection also has to be brought in. So it is both proactive and reactive. And the next stage is containment. So when an event happens, okay, you come into action, you do the detection. The first and foremost step after you do the detection is to restrict, is to isolate. That's called containment. You have to isolate the database or the EC2 instance in a separate network. That's the first and foremost step. So that's about containment, and you need to ensure that it is removed. So if, say, there is a malware installed into a EC2 instance, you need to ensure that it is what steps are you taking to remove it, and more importantly, how fast are you recovering? So that's the resiliency, right? So we have been attacked, we have detected the root cause, we have contained it, but it's very important to bring the business back to action. So we might have created a disaster recovery strategy, and we should ensure that when things go wrong, it quickly goes to the passive region in a disaster recovery. It switchovers to the passive infrastructure, and we need to ensure that the business is not down for a considerable amount of time. So we have things like RTO, RPO, and other things. So that's about how fast you recover. And once you recover, it doesn't end there. The most important activity is the learning that we do. So even in the Avengers movie, you would have seen that after they encounter the negative character, they all will be coming down together. They all will meet and they'll discuss, and they will take the learning, and they'll get ready for the next event, right? So which we will see in the next movie. Similarly, every active cyber event will give you a learning. So it's important for these incident response teams to come together and discuss what went wrong and how they can prevent it from going wrong, and they can further improve the security posture of their organization. So that's the post-incidental activity where the learning happens, and it's very important to document these learnings and include it as part of your incident response strategy. So that's how the life cycle is. Okay. So this is about how do we use the native AWS services for incident response. So we saw the phases in the earlier slide. So the phases that you are seeing is a breakdown of the four boxes that you saw. It's preparation, detection, then triage, containment, analysis, remediation, recovery, and the post-incident activity. Now there are, the list is. I wouldn't restrict the AWS services to what you see in this slide. In fact, there is one new service which we will talk about. But these are the key, bare minimal and key services that any AWS environment should have, irrespective of their size. And this is a matrix of where which of the services are used in which of the phases. So, for example, in preparation, you will have CloudTrail. So, CloudTrail will help you to ensure that you are having enough visibility. And the capability of CloudTrail is backtracing, right? So if there is any event, you will be using CloudTrail to do the detection part. So that will help you to arrive at the root cause. So next is the detection. So I added to CloudTrail guard duty and config. So these are the services which will be used for detection. So guard duty, it has the capability to detect if there is any say a brute force attack, or if there is a root user logging in. So it has a set of findings which we will see in today's session. So it has that capability to detect. And config, we saw yesterday as well. The major capability of config is to track the configuration changes. So if somebody is tampering with the S3 bucket, then config will come to know and it will record. So these three services are must to establish a detection capability. Next is collection. So there will be too many data getting logged. There will be VPC flow logs, there will be CloudTrail, there will be guard duty findings, there will be config. So we cannot log in into each and every module of these into the systems, the individual systems. We need a one single pane where all of these data comes together, and that's what Security Hub is for. So it will collect all of these data and it will show you collectively in a single lens, and it will create a meaning out of it. So that's about Security Hub, which will be used for collection. And next is containment. So we need to first, as a first step, we need to stop the spreading of, say, a malware, or if a S3 bucket is compromised, there is a high chance that the user can also enter into an EC2 instance, or they can also enter and tamper into a RDS. So we need to stop that. So that's what containment is about. So we need to isolate the system, and that's where the networking engineer plays a big role. And Amazon Detective and Systems Manager are much used here. So next is analysis. So we need to create a meaning out of this data. So for whatever has been observed so far, from the data that we have collected, we need to create some insights out of it. What does it mean? So that's where CloudTrail, Detective, Security Hub, and Systems Manager help us. And remediation. So remediation config has a capability to, we have to do the automation, of course. It will tell you when the security best practice is deviating, and we can do automation on top of it, and we can do the remediation automatically. We can tie it with the Lambda and remediate. Systems manager, we saw yesterday, it has automation, it has run books, so it has documents. So we can bring in automation there and remediate things quickly without human intervention. So these two services are a must. And recovery systems manager again. And finally, post-incident activity. So a detective is used for this. So a detective will tell you, we'll see a demo, a small demo today. It will tell you what APIs were called, which APIs were, what were the most number of APIs which were rejected by a particular IP address. So it helps you to gather some learning out of the entire process of the cyber event. So that's at a high level as to what native services of AWS could be used across the incident response phases. Yeah. Okay. So now we'll look at each of the service. So I'm not going deep into. In fact, I'm not doing systems manager because yesterday Manish gave a very detailed demo on systems manager, and he covered each and every angle to it. So I'm not going to spend time on it, and we will look at each of the service. We'll see how it helps in incident response and how teams should ideally use it. So before I go ahead, I want you to guess what's going to be the next service which I'm going to do a deep dive. So this is a, don't take it as a very serious joke. So it's like a PJ. Okay, any guesses? Why did the AWS engineer get lost in the cloud? Why do you think the engineer got lost? Any answers? Too many services and config. Okay. Any guesses? Why does someone get lost? Yeah, Prasanna. Wow. Yes, CloudTrail was not enabled because they forgot to enable CloudTrail and couldn't retrace their steps. Good, Prasanna. Saknik has written because he forgot his Route 53. Nice. Tarek, yeah. Tarek is talks about CloudWatch and CloudTrail. Okay, so CloudTrail is the one which helps you to retrace. So that's why we brought in CloudTrail. So our next topic is going to be CloudTrail. So we'll see in detail how CloudTrail should be used, and my screen is visible, right? Okay, let me move on to my. Okay, I'm in my console. So where CloudTrail is a service which you can just it will be readily be available here. Yesterday's demo, I had used a CloudTrail. I'll show you how do we create it and how data gets logged in CloudTrail and how you can make a meaning out of it. Because when you look at the CloudTrail data, you will get overwhelmed. There is too much information thrown at you. But there are tools to help you out, and we can greatly simplify the log file. So don't get alarmed by the amount of text it gives for each and every log. All right, so this is the CloudTrail dashboard, and it is a best practice. In fact, it is a must that CloudTrail should be enabled in the region you operate for your account. Each and every region should have CloudTrail enabled. Okay, so I should actually move to the Mumbai region. Just give me a minute. Okay, so first and foremost you say create CloudTrail, okay, and then you give a name to the cloud tray. So every CloudTrail has a S3 bucket. So that's where it will deposit the findings, the log information. And by default, it is a best practice to enable encryption for the S3 bucket. And when you do the encryption, you can have you can use AWS KMS. So you can either bring or use your own KMS key, or you can use an existing one. Okay, and then log file validation, you should enable it because it will ensure that the file does not get tampered, right? And many teams don't do this, but it's a good practice to send the logs to CloudWatch as well. So enable the CloudWatch logs and have a group dedicated for CloudTrail in CloudWatch. I'll show you why it's essential and how it becomes handy. So either you can reuse some existing ones or create a new one, okay, and then the IAM role, right? So you can have a new IAM role or an existing one, and then you click next. Okay. So when you click next, okay, I'll use a new KMS. This is another important page where by default management events will get logged. So management events are the API. So each and every read API, write API will get logged, and it's also a good practice to enable the data events as well. So in the data event, you select if you need not log all the data events of all your resources. So if you want to just do for S3, you can do it. In fact, you can also restrict it. These are some measures to constrain the data storage. Otherwise, unnecessarily you will keep logging and you will pay the subscription. So you can reduce and you can optimize your data by restricting the events that you feel will be more valuable for you. So you can just do the write only events or the read only events. You also have an option for custom events. So here you can actually specify. So for example, event name. So event name is the API which the API action. So for example, if I'm creating a bucket, then there will be an event name parameter with the value create bucket, which will get logged in CloudTrail. So I can choose a configuration that I will log only create bucket events. So I just say event name, and I say here create bucket. I say next, and then create the trail. Okay, so that's a first and foremost step. So most important is enable the management events and the data events, and ensure that the trail is encrypted. And also when you attach an IAM role, create a role in such a way that it follows the least privilege permission. Don't expose this CloudTrail file to too many people. Always create a role dedicated for reading the CloudTrail, and assign not more than one or two to this role, and ensure that the users who are assigned to this role do their job properly and don't expose it to too many people. So that's where our trail is getting created, or yeah, it's created. So let me show you. I mean, it will start recording, so it will take some time for the data to come in. I am going to show you how you can read one of the existing CloudTrail that I already have. So in CloudTrail, this is a new feature which got, I think it's 1 or 2 year old. It's called Lake. So you can see here query. So you can actually write SQL queries on this CloudTrail logs. So how do you do that is there is something called event data stores. So you need to create an event data store. You can choose what is the retention period for it. So here you can create a data store. You can say that you want to create the data store for the CloudTrail events. You can choose management events or and data events, API activity, read and write. And here again, you can, similar to the CloudTrail that you saw earlier, you can restrict and then you can create a data store. So I'll show you how a data store looks. So this is a data store which I created. It's called CloudTrail API Calls, and you can write SQL queries on top of it. So this will help you in creating insights out of the CloudTrail logs. So you go to query. So this is the editor where you can write queries to query the CloudTrail log, and the data store is nothing like a table. You can treat it like a SQL table, right? So this is the name of the event data store ID. This is like a table where you can say select column names from table, and then there you can give the column names and you can write a SQL query. So this way you can create insights and you will be able to see what is happening. So this will come very handy when you are doing a detection exercise. So let's see some of the queries. So here there are some sample queries over here. With these are already given by AWS. So if you want to know who are the users who called a particular API on a particular day. So one example is if you want to know who are the users who uploaded objects to XYZ S3 bucket yesterday, or you can give a time frame, maybe between 1 hour of today or any day. So you can give it here. So this is the format. So here you can restrict the time, and then you can give the event name as create bucket, which means that this query will tell you when this create bucket API was invoked during this time frame, right? So you would want to know what are the various columns available in this event data store. So these event properties are nothing but the columns. So you can go here, and these are the columns which are available. Mostly we use things like event name, event source, event time, and then account ID is also used, and then resources is an array, so that tells you what AWS resource was used, and then user agent, user identity is also used. So let's see how the data looks. So I'm not going to first show you all the specific columns, and I'm going to show you how the raw data looks. I'll just do a select star. Okay. We'll just see the 5 rows. So here you will have 2 windows, results and command output. Okay, so if there is any error in the SQL query, you can see it in the command output window. So in the query column, it will tell you the error message. So now we don't have an error. There are 5 records which are returned, and this is how the data looks. So yeah, we cannot make any meaning out of it. What you do is just select all the rows, copy it. This is a JSON output. Okay, so you can open any of the JSON editors that you have, or if you have a Python utility which can convert the JSON to a table, nothing like it, go ahead. Okay, yeah, so it will make it more readable. Okay, I don't know why it's not happening. Okay, I think it is taking my earlier file. Let me expand this. Okay, so these are the parameters which gets logged. So first is the user identity, and this is the API name. So the assumed role is, it means that there was an IAM user who had not the physical user. Any IAM role might have done an API activity. So you can see here this is the role which was assumed, and these are the other parameters. For example, if had there been an IAM user, then this user name will have the ARN of the IAM user, right? And then you will have the event time, and then the event source. So from where this API was invoked, and which API was invoked, okay? And if there is an error code, error message, and then you will have additional event data, and so on. So you can use these uh, parameters to write your query, to write a meaningful query. So let's go back to our query window. So for example, I have these queries already. So here I want to know, I have a bucket called Learn Sea Trail Lake, which I just created today morning. And I want to know what happened, or what API activities were invoked against this bucket by a particular user. So I'm using the column user identity.arn, and I'm putting a like operator. Athena is the name of the IAM user here. So I basically want to know what this user did on this bucket Learn Sea Trail Lake. And I can also give a time range in the event name. Not giving it here, but if you want to give a time range, this is the syntax. So I can say and event time greater than equal to April 4th to greater than equal to, I'll give 10th. All right. So I'm selecting the columns event name. So with this will tell me what API was invoked. Event source will tell me from where the API, like which module, whether it originated from config or it originated from the console, from the sign-in. That's what event source will tell me. And the IP address from where this user logged in, right? So let me run this query. Okay, there is an invalid query. Let me remove this event time. Okay, so let me see why this event time is, and event time greater than okay, this is the way you give. Not sure, I need to troubleshoot. This is the line which is causing the error. I'm just removing event time for now. So I'm running it again. So 90 records were returned, and these are the query results. So if you see, the user Athena logged in from these IP addresses, and these were the events which were these were the APIs which were invoked. So if I want to know whether this user created any bucket, so now I am giving the bucket in the where clause, but if I want to know if this user created any bucket between so and so time frame, I can do that. So all I need to do is give the event name as create bucket, right? So this will tell me the buckets or this is giving two rows, which means that Athena user created buckets from these IP addresses. So as a next step, we might also want to know when they create, like when the user created and so on, right? So we can give event time here. So this was the time when the user created the bucket. So as a next step, again, we would want to know what bucket they created, what was the name, etc. Right? So for that, we can use the resources or yeah. So we can use the resources column. So here it's not returning. Okay, let me do a star. Okay, so all the columns are coming now. User identity, event source, event name, user agent, request parameters, additional event data, event ID, event type, account ID, VPC endpoint, event category, and yeah. So these are all the columns which get returned. It will tell you what happened by this user during the time they invoke the create bucket event. All right. So in the request parameters, you can see what parameters they actually passed. So this will tell you what was the bucket that they created. So you can see the bucket name which this user created. All right. So this bucket was created and from where they created, from S3. So that's how you do the detection. Then the second bucket was created in this name, and you also know the time we already know, and it was from this IP address. It was the same IP address, and the time was this. So this is how you use CloudTrail, and there are other methods as well. So if you're not, I mean, Lake is fairly new. So earlier there was this feature called Event History. So in event history, it is a bit tedious. You cannot write queries here. If you want to do queries, you have to go to Athena. You can create a Athena table out of it, and then there will be separate charges for Athena as well. So that's anyway one way to do it. In event history, you can filter out event name, and then you can give create bucket here, and it will tell you what buckets they created. Okay, so in the last 12 hours, these two buckets were created. All right, so there is another feature called integrations. So not only in in this CloudTrail Lake, not only CloudTrail, you can also bring in other systems. Like you can bring in an external data store as well. So you can do a custom integration, and you can also bring in logs from an external data store. So that's about CloudTrail. If you have any questions, put it in the chat window. Can do crawling data to AWS log and use it. Yes. So if you don't want to use Lake, you can create a glue job. So that's what this will do. When you say Athena table, behind the scene, a glue job will be created and the table will get created. Okay.
That
So yeah.
one more question is there. How's
Okay.
CloudTrail query slash data store differs from Athena S3 bucket since both uses equal to query logs?
Yes, Athena K table query is the same thing. So there is no difference. Both are SQL queries.
Got it.
Both are SQL queries only. So it's the same way you write in both.
The next question is, how does this Lake query uses CloudWatch insights behind the scene? The query looks so similar to an inside query.
Inside query, it does not, but yeah, it's very similar to an inside query. We can also look at CloudWatch. So when we created CloudTrail, if you remember, we had attached a CloudWatch to it, right? So let me go to this CloudTrail. So this is what we have been using, and the CloudWatch group associated with it is Playground Labs CloudWatch, right? So let me go to CloudWatch. You can also do your detection activity in CloudWatch as well. So one advantage of CloudWatch is you can create metrics, right? So you can have a dashboard created anytime a user create bucket invokes a create bucket. You can have a dashboard, so you will get an alert. You can also attach SNS topic to it. So anytime somebody does a not only create bucket, anytime somebody downloads data from a particular bucket. So there are scenarios where we store sensitive data as well in S3. So we don't want people to maybe download from it or write to it. So certain actions we might want to restrict, right? So in spite of that, things can happen. So we should ideally create alerts, automated alerts for it. You can very well use CloudWatch, create a metric. So for example, you go to this cloud log groups. So this is the log groups which was attached to the CloudTrail, and here you can search the log group. So you can put your filter patterns here. So for example, yeah, so this is the pattern that I had pre-written for the demo. So if there is an event source like from S3, if this particular user has created a bucket, then I want an metric to be created. You can do that. So it will list down any data which is matching this criteria, and as a next step, you can create a metric filter out of it, and you can add that metric filter into a CloudWatch alarm, and you can have a dashboard for yourself. So you were talking about log insights, right? So yeah, Insights also has queries, but this query is different. I don't think this is the same as an Athena query or a Lake query. This is a bit different because in Athena and in Lake, it's just like a SQL. So you have that event ID which we saw, right? That event ID is nothing but a SQL table for you, and the way you write select column from table name, that's the same way you write the query here, but here it's a bit different. Okay. Yeah, so search log group, let me see. should return some events. Yeah. So this is just the copy of your CloudTrail log. Here you have IAM user, then you have the event source, event name, okay, and then you have what else is helpful for us. And then you also get to know if there is any VPC endpoint, if it is a management event. Source IP address is very important. It's very handy when we do the detection. And yes, user agent. So whether they used a browser or they used a CLI, so all this you will get to know from the user agent parameter. All right. Okay. So I think we can move on to the next topic. Again, what is the next? So we saw a demo on the preparation. Any guesses? Yeah, I think it's obvious. Why do cyber criminals avoid playing hide and seek with Amazon Guard Duty? Any idea? Anything that you can come up with? It's a very silly response though. Because guard duty is always on duty and they know they'll be found in no time. So don't play hide and seek with guard duty. Okay, so the next service that we have is guard duty. Okay, it's very important. It's a must-have service for any SOC team, for any incident response team. It is the IDS capability of AWS, intrusion detection service. So you might have a third-party product, Palo Alto, Prisma, there are tons of third-party products. Even though you have it, it's a best practice you enable guard duty, and enabling is not enough. You have to create a meaning out of it. You have to understand what guard duty is generating for you, and you always have to keep an eye on what findings it is giving you, and you have to bring in automation to help you be better prepared. So let's have a look at guard duty. So I'm switching over to Sydney region. Okay, so guard duty has a set of findings. So findings is like security hub. You will come across the word findings, and then guard duty config. So we have this word findings in many of the AWS services. Nothing but finding is something which will tell you what has happened. It will indicate something, right? So let's see what all capabilities guard duties can find for us. So there is a long list, ever-growing list. Every month there will be some additions or the other. I had kept the. Okay, let's look at the documentation itself, the AWS documentation that will have the latest findings list. Let us say findings types. So across EC2, IAM, it has a list of findings. So if you look at EC2 findings, so these are the findings that it will tell you. So if there is someone who has created a command and control server by logging into an EC2, if they are doing any crypto mining, and if there is any cryptocurrency, Bitcoins kind of activities going on, guard duty will be able to tell you. So these are the list of findings for EC2. If somebody is trying to do a brute force attack, constantly trying to get into an EC2 instance, you will get to know. IAM, if the root user is accessing, so there are these are the findings. So for example, anomalous behavior by an IAM user, then you will also have behaviors around pen testing, because all pen testing of all the services is not allowed in AWS. So guard duty will be able to tell you if somebody is attempting. Okay, and then unauthorized access. So if somebody is trying to log in into console and they are repeatedly getting any unsuccessful login, it will be able to tell you any malicious IP caller. So just go through this list. Similarly, Kubernetes, EKS, RDS, S3. So in S3, it has again malicious IP caller, and then unauthorized access. So it has the capability to attach an IP address invocation with S3. And there are some findings which are no longer valid. So that's also there. So refer this documentation. So let's see, I had enabled guard duty recently, and I had used root user login to enter into the console, which is not a good practice. So it has logged in as a finding. So this is how it comes out. So you can click the finding and you will be able to see which region, when, what, and so on. So it's a severity low, and it will tell you the time and the IP address, the location. It also gives you the latitude, longitude. It's also giving me my internet service provider details. Okay, so another one is privilege escalation. Okay, so what does this have? So it's a okay, this one. Yeah, API is commonly used in privilege escalation tactics. So I think there was an EC2 instance, if I'm not wrong. So that was probably I need to do a why analysis as to why this finding has come here. But yes, there is one EC2 instance, and it's an M3 large as well. Okay, I need to do a real investigation, I guess. Yeah, but this is how findings come up, and if you feel that the finding is genuine, it's okay, or that it's happening, you can also suppress the findings. So in the last reInvent, there was a very helpful feature which was added, which was around malware. So considering the malware, the ransomware attacks which are happening, this is very much useful. So you can use guard duty to scan your EC2 instances against malware. So all you need to do is you have to tag whichever EC2 instances you want to be scanned by guard duty. You have to give a specific tag to it, name value pair, and here when you configure the malware protection, you have to give that configuration. So this is how it works. So you go under settings, malware protection, scan options, and here you can add the tags. So you can have the inclusion tags. It will scan the EC2 instances with these tags. Or if you want to scan all of your EC2 instances, but you want to exclude certain EC2 instances with a certain tag, you can do that. All right. So that's about guard duty. Towards the end of the session, I will show you a detailed automation which I have built using guard duty. So it has something called a list. All right. So every organization, they will have certain IP addresses which they feel are trusted. So they will allow those IP addresses. At the same time, they will also have IP addresses which they feel it should not be accessed or it should not be allowed. Of course, there are a number of ways in which you can manage it. You can use firewall policies. So there are other ways as well. But if you want to bring this capability to guard duty, you can very well use this list management feature. And through automation, we will be able to know if somebody is tampering this list. If first and foremost, whether guard duty really has any threat list and trusted list configured, that you can find out using an automation. And as a next step, you can also check whether the right trusted IP list has been configured with guard duty or not. So we'll see that towards the end. Now we will move on to the next service.
Raji, there are a few questions in the chat. The first question is from Tariq. Can guard duty block attacks too in conjunction with Lambda or any other services?
Okay, so guard duty is a detection service. It's a IDS service. It's not an IPS. It cannot prevent an attack. But if somebody is attempting to do an attack, like if somebody is doing a brute force, or you see an anomalous behavior from an AM user, somebody is trying to log in into the console, they are repeatedly using the wrong password. So it will be able to detect such activities. It cannot prevent. For prevention, you have to use an IPS product.
Got it.
What are the types of input data sources for guard duty? No, guard duty has, when you enable guard duty, behind the scene, it does not talk to configure a CloudTrail. It has its own raw data behind it. Both are independent. Okay, this is sample query. You don't need to do any investigation on sample query. Okay, was this related to CloudWatch, Tarek? I think it was related to CloudWatch. Okay, so we'll move on to the next one. I have, so detection guard duty we saw. I have a very small quiz. So we all are familiar with Security Hub. Just one small question. Which is not a feature of Security Hub? What can Security Hub not do? Automated security checks based on AWS best practices and industry standards, continuous monitoring of security groups for overly permissive access, automatically creating new AWS EC2 instances to replace those affected by security incidents, aggregating, organizing, and prioritizing security findings from various AWS security services. Any answers? Yeah, Arun is very active. Yes, so it cannot create new EC2 instances. So that's the right answer, and we are going to see Security Hub. Okay, I'll move back to my Mumbai region. Again, it's a must-have service. You even if you use any third-party product. So Security Hub, fundamentally, it is a posture management, cloud security posture management tool. So its main job is to tell you whether your security index is low, medium, or high, and why it is low, why it is medium, what is going wrong. And you can also have Security Hub work against a regulation, like a compliance standard. So any IT organization, when they have their systems into production, they have to follow NIST, CIS. So these are the well-known compliance standards. And added to it, if the organization is into credit cards, if they collect credit card data, they also have to comply by PCI DSS. So there are certain security standards, and Security Hub has these standards pre-built. So you don't have to worry about what those security rules in PCI DSS are. So PCI DSS will, for example, tell you that the database which is storing your credit card data should be encrypted at rest, should be encrypted in transit. It should be placed inside a private subnet. It should have good IAM controls around it. The list goes on. So you don't have to know what that list is. In Security Hub, you have this security standards. You just have to enable PCI DSS, and Security Hub will tell you what is your compliance score against this standard. So I had enabled a certain basic standards. So, for example, CIS benchmarks is a foundation best practice, right? And the latest version is in fact 1.5, I think. I have brought in 1.4 here. So CIS has a set of best practices. So it has across IAM, EC2, CloudTrail, and so on. So when I enable Security Hub, it will take some time. You will not get this data immediately. It will take few hours of time, and it will tell you whether that best practice is met or not. So in this account, I don't have any MFA, even for root account. So it's not a good security best practice. It is a critical severity. So that's what you find it as a finding here. Okay, and then similarly, EC2, right? So in this account, there is a security group which I have exposed to internet traffic. So it will tell me which security group is the culprit. So it will take me to that security group. So I have a very bad inbound rule where I'm allowing the whole world to access this security group. So whichever EC2 is attached to the security group can easily be compromised. So that's how these rules are. So that's the main purpose of Security Hub. So all you need to do is enable the standard, and it will give you a score. So you will have an idea as to how much work you need to do. Okay. But as a best practice, this you need to bring in proactive security guardrails. So such things happen, like the scores of 27 and 32. These things happen when your foundation, when your cloud foundation has not been done well. So you should not abruptly migrate, or you should not just expose the cloud to your IT teams. You have to bring in proactive, which is like preventive security guardrails. You should already enable Security Hub. You should already have policies brought in. And why is security group getting created with internet traffic as the inbound rule in the first place? Look at it. Look at why it is allowed in the first place. So bring in some governance. Bring in preventive security guardrails, and don't let it happen. Right, so that's where governance plays a major role, which we were talking earlier. There are tools available. We can also use our inbuilt automation. So you can build your own Lambda functions. You can use service control policies when you build your landing zone and so on. It's a separate topic, but yeah. So those are the measures which ideally you should do. And not only within this AWS boundary, Security Hub can also integrate with a number of third-party products. So, for example, it can, if you are using Alert Logic, a SIEM tool, if you're using Aqua Security, or you just need to do some button clicks, and it will ingest the data from Barracuda. You can also do the other way around. So if you want to have a single location where you want Security Hub findings a Barracuda findings, all of them in one single place, you can do that. Okay, so that's all about Security Hub. I think there are no comments. If any thoughts you want to exchange, put it in the chat window. We'll move on to the next. Okay. Okay, so we have a riddle. In the realm of cloud, I work day and night, connecting dots to expose what's out of sight. I trace anomalies and dissect their cause. To strengthen security, I'm never on pause. Who am I? Config. Do I trace anomalies? Config, does it trace anomalies? Does it tell you what caused it? Prasanna is right. Detective. Yes. So the next service that we are going to see is Amazon Detective. We don't have time for a deep dive session, but we'll just see what it does, what insights it brings out. Okay. Okay. So once you enable Detective, you need to wait for a few hours, and then it will tell you, it will generate very useful findings, in fact. So if you look here, the first and foremost is around the IAM part, right? So which user it's not following the best practice, which IAM role is invoking an API, but it's failing, and how many such API calls have been failing. So you will be able to know all of that. And then EC2 instances. So which EC2 instance is getting the most traffic, and there is some trouble. If there is some failure which is happening, so these are the findings. So these findings, the speciality is you will be able to arrive at the root cause. So for example, I created a user called Lazy Boy, and let me see what detective is not happy with it. So there are some failed calls which it has found, and it will also tell you from which IP address. Okay, and yeah, so there are 11 failed calls through this user from this IP address, and there are 6 of these calls from S3, and the calls are list buckets. So 6 list buckets API was failed from this user. So maybe this user is repeatedly trying to do a list bucket action, but it's not able to. So this is something which needs an attention. All right. So similarly, okay. Sorry. Yeah, and then root users. So as you know, Security Hub also told us that the root user is accessing it. So the root user has accessed over this time frame, and there are 22 failed calls by the root user. The root user has used these 2 IP addresses. And in config, we have 9 failed calls from this IP address. So yeah, describe remediation execution API has been failed from this root user. Similarly, in S3, there is a failed call reported from get bucket access block, and then there is bucket ownership controls which has failed, and CloudTrail also has one failed call. And so these are the it helps you to do some tracing when you do an investigation. This will be handy and in finding out what were the various API calls by a particular user, IP address, all at the same time. And we should definitely have a dedicated session for detective where we can do some end-to-end investigation. All right, so we'll move on to the next one. Okay, again a riddle. Across the cloud, I orchestrate and refine, managing, optimizing, making systems align. A single pane for tasks with both big and small, streamlining operations. I answer the call. Who am I? Managing, optimizing, making systems align. Yes, systems manager. AWS trends. Yeah, systems manager is the right answer. And yesterday, Manish did a great job. Like he did a really end to end. He showed all that is possible with systems manager. So I'm not covering systems manager today. I'll move on to the next, which is how do we manage threats with guard duty? Okay, so I have used some automation on top of guard duty. Okay, so if you remember, I was talking about the list feature of guard duty, right? So let me go there. So here I'm using actually three services. I'm combining guard duty, config, and lambda. So how do we combine these three services together, integrate these three, and use automation to ease the security task? So what I have done here is, okay, yeah. Okay, so the scenario is there is an organization who has a certain IP addresses which they feel is trusted. So their users are allowed to browse these IP addresses, and then they have certain IP addresses which are not allowed. So when we integrate those IP addresses in along with guard duty, now you don't have to do anything from your end. Guard duty will take care. So if anybody is trying to access the threat IP list, it will generate a finding. Similarly, if anybody is accessing a trusted IP, it will suppress the finding. It will not generate anything because it's a trusted IP list. So instead of using a firewall, I opt for guard duty. Now the thing is, I want to bring in automation here. I don't want to have a manual intervention. So I have created a S3 bucket in which I'm storing the trusted IP list and the threat IP list. I'll show you that bucket. So why is it in a S3 bucket is there will be a separate team. So there will be a threat intelligence analyst. So only they will know what list should come under threat IP because they are in constant touch with the cyber world. There could be certain IP address which is a threat to the organization. So they will be updating this S3 bucket. So they don't have to come into guard duty and add that IP address. So this S3 bucket is a common entity. It will be accessible by the threat intelligence team, and guard duty will be connected with this S3 bucket. So every time this S3 bucket is updated, guard duty will come to know. So that's why we have kept the S3 bucket like outside. So there is a S3 bucket called My Organization Trust List. So there is a text file, a very simple text file, which will just store the trusted IP addresses. This is some sample IP addresses. All right. Similarly, there is another bucket for threats. Okay, let me see what is the name of the bucket. Prohibited list. Okay. So this is the bucket name, and okay, I think it is my organization's prohibited list. Okay, I thought that's where I went. Yeah, my organization prohibited list. So this is the text file which stores the IP address which are not allowed. Okay, so the threat intelligence team, okay, these are not allowed. So the threat intelligence team will be updating these two lists. They don't have to worry about how guard duty is talking to it or whatever, right? So now guard duty will include whatever is included in this text file. Guard duty will include in its settings. Now, how are we automating it? Now, this is fine. This is a one-time activity, but there could be a chance, even though you have all the preventive measures, there could be a chance that in some AWS accounts, so our life does not revolve around one single AWS account, right? Every customer, every organization has hundreds of AWS accounts. So in each and every account, this setting has to be brought in. Now, how do we bring in governance? How do we know whether each and every AWS account has this setting intact or not? What if one or two accounts don't even have this list file in their list management? Or what if somebody has included some other trusted IP list? Or if what if somebody has tampered this location? I can always alter this, and I can say I agree and update the list. So we have to ensure that these things don't happen, and of course we don't want to do it manually. So which service are we using for it to ensure that these configurations are intact? Config. So we will be using AWS config, and that will ensure that the guard duty of that particular account of that particular region has this list file URL and has this exact URL in it. Now, obviously, this URL is subjective, right? It's not a universal URL. For my organization, this is my trusted IP URL. So it's not possible for us to expect a managed rule. We should not expect AWS to already have built a rule for this. So a managed rule is not possible. It won't work out. We have to create a custom rule. So yesterday we saw how we used managed rules in config. Today we will create a custom rule. And how we are going to create custom rule is we are going to do a Lambda. So we are going to develop a Lambda function, and with the Lambda, we are going to create a custom rule. Again, like yesterday, I have the source code of these Lambda functions in my repo. So you can access my repo. But let me show you the Lambda function first. I will walk you through what the Lambda function does, and then I will show you how you can create the custom rule. Okay, so I have two custom rules which I'm going to create. Okay, so one custom rule for this trusted IP and another custom rule for threat IP. So for each of these rules, I have a Lambda function. So I have two Lambda functions. So let me show you the trusted IP code. Okay. Let me know if I have to maximize because the font is quite small in the Lambda function. Has my code come up? Yeah. I can maximize the. Is this okay? Better?
Yes.
Okay. So this is the body of the Lambda function. So in AWS config, when I create the custom rule, I also have the facility to pass parameters. Okay, so in the parameters of AWS config, I will be passing the URL of the trusted IP file. So my security policy in my organization security policy says that the trusted IP URL should be this. So I will put this URL as a parameter in AWS config. So as a first step, the function will read these parameters, and these are the lines for reading the parameter values, and then I instantiate the client object for guard duty. Now guard duty has a API called list detectors. So this list detectors will tell me whether there are any detectors created first of all or not. And if there are no detectors created, then it's a bigger violation, right? So the function will come out, and it will take its own necessary action, which we will see. If there are detectors created, my next step is to check whether that particular URL is entered or not. So that's the compliance which I'm trying to bring in. So detectors is an array. So we will loop in every object of the array, and then we will loop in through each and every IP set. So IP set IDs. This is a keyword. Okay, so this will tell you whether this entity, whether this entity is present or not. So this particular row is IP set IDs, and once it goes to this row in the for loop, it will extract this column, URL column, and it will compare. So that's what we're doing here. So here it will this is like a query. So you pass on the detector and the ID, and then you get the location. This location is nothing but the URL in guard duty, and then you are comparing both the URLs. So you are comparing the URL in guard duty with the URL which is supposed to be there, right? So this s3 underscore URL is what we got from the parameters in config. So we are comparing two URLs, one which is actually there in guard duty and one which is supposed to be there. So if both are equal, this is a key line that you must focus. So these are the lines which will make a compliance rule, which will make a AWS config rule compliant. So if both are matching, it will make the config rule as compliant. If it is not matching, then it will make the config rule as non-compliant, and it will put a message saying that the S3 location for the trusted IP is incorrect or there is an error. Okay. Now earlier we saw what if there is some error or if there is some exception while looping through the IP set IDs. So there is some problem, right? So then also we will make the config rule as non-compliant. Now These are the configurations for the config rule. Now to actually make these configurations appear in the config console, we have to call this put evaluations API. So this put evaluations API will update the evaluations object with these details, and you will be able to see the compliance, real-time compliance status in config. Okay, so this is how every custom config rule should be built. So to start with, this is the business logic of the Lambda, and then you have to ensure that you are building the evaluations object of the config rule, and you use the put evaluations object. If you don't have put evaluations, there is no point, because you will not be able to see the status of the config rule. I hope that was clear. Now you can download this code from my repo. So it's the same repo that I shared yesterday. Similarly is the other function, not much difference. So threat list function. So it will first read the parameter. So this function is for this one, right? So it will read the parameters from the config rule, and same way it will use the list detectors. And here you have to use the list threat intel sets. This is a API of GuardDuty. And then once you get in the response object, you have to loop in the sets, and you have to extract the location column, and then you have to compare. If both are exactly same, then only you make the config rule compliant. Otherwise, it will be non-compliant. Now we are done with the Lambda function. How do we build the custom config rule? So that's very simple. You just go to config. Okay, so I didn't in Sydney region. I have not enabled any standard, so the rules will be less. So I just have these two rules for each of these Lambda functions. So because they are custom rules, you can see it's custom Lambda. So how did I add this rule? All you need to do is create custom Lambda rule. Okay, give a name to the Lambda rule, give the ARN of the function, and then you can choose when you want to run this rule. So I had chosen periodic. So every 24 hours, I want this rule to be run. So you can choose the frequency. And the parameters, right? So we want to pass, if you remember the URL, a URL has to be passed, right? So this is the parameter. So that's what we are passing it here. So it's a key value pair. So you can pass the URL of the S3 list here, and then you can click next and create it. So I'll show you the configurations of the existing rule. So it will tell you when it was last run successfully, and this is the parameters. Periodic 24 hours, location is what I have given, and here I have given the S3 URL. And it will tell you whether it is compliant or not. So it is, for now it is compliant. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how it comes into action. So let's assume that somebody tampered the URL in GuardDuty. Let's see how the system behaves. I'll go to GuardDuty. Okay, this is Mumbai. Okay, so I'm going to the trusted IP and I'm tampering this URL. Okay, I'm saying ABC list. Now, ideally, the config should turn non-compliant. So the rule will run every 24 hours. So I don't know when it run today. So it will run only tomorrow if I leave it. So I'm going to manually evaluate the rule. All right. So I had changed trusted IP, right? So let me go to trusted IP rule. Trusted IP rule. And I'm going to reevaluate this rule. So I'll wait for a few seconds. The rule will become non-compliant here. Okay, so the rule has become non-compliant. Okay, and we see this error message. So if you remember, we had put this error message in Lambda. So now that it's become non-compliant, the Lambda function should have got triggered, right? So let's see if the Lambda function got triggered. We can see that in CloudWatch. So we'll go to CloudWatch. This is for trusted IP, right? So let me go to that function and go to CloudWatch. Okay, so the function was fired at 12:24. So the function has got triggered and it has logged something. Okay, so let me go and check guard duty, whether it updated guard duty correctly. Okay, so let me refresh this. Trusted IP, let me see. Trusted IP is still not updated. Let me see what's wrong. Okay, it is still ABC only. It should have ideally updated the trusted IP column in guard duty automatically. Okay, I don't want to troubleshoot now, but ideally, I don't know, it was working. Okay, so what will happen is this URL that you see, without any manual intervention, it will come to the right URL. Okay, let me try my luck again. Okay, it's not changing. I'll have to see why. And when you evaluate this rule again, it will change from non-compliant to compliant on its own, because the Lambda would have done the corrective action for you. So that way, the rule will automatically become compliant. I'll check why it didn't update. It should have done. I think there is some small code error. Okay, so that's all I had for today. And Sanchit, do we have some time for security lake?
Yeah, sure. I think we can cover up that.
Can
And then
cover that? Okay.
sure, please.
Okay. Yeah, so the next that I had in mind, I wanted to talk on Security Lake. We will not have time to do a deep dive demo into it, but what I wanted to do today is give you an overview. So, Amazon Security Lake was a service which was launched in reInvent this year. So in November 2022, it was announced, and this is a capability which is directly linked to a incident response team. Not only them, but for any security team for that matter, but it greatly improves the efficiency of SecOps teams. So the purpose of Security Lake was to centralize, like now we saw CloudWatch, then we saw Security Hub findings, then we saw CloudTrail logs. So even though Security Hub brings everything together, but CloudTrail, you have to again log in there, right? And then if you want to get into the monitoring logs of Lambda, you have to get into the CloudWatch. So likewise, there are cases where things become one-dimensional. So if I want to see the behavior of a user, so a user could be there who might have tried attempting an entry into an S3 bucket, say 4 or 5 times within say 5 minutes, and then immediately that user would have successfully got into an EC2 instance. Now, if what to find this behavior, what I have to do is first I need to log in into CloudTrail. I have to write a query and then realize that yes, this user is trying to get into S3 bucket, and then I have to use VPC flow log to see whether that same user in the same time frame was able to get into a EC2 instance. So I have to log in into two separate systems. Even though I have Security Hub cannot bring in these two into one single umbrella. And not only that, if you look at Security Hub, I'll go to the console. There are so many orange and red, right? Now, which one do I pick first? So this alert fatigue is one such area of concern for every security team. Which one to prioritize? Every CSPM tool is telling me that there is a list of 10-15 buckets which are not following the best practice. But there should be a mechanism for me to prioritize these S3 buckets. So here we saw, let's take a lower score. So for example, if you take CIS, and if you take say, if you take the S3, now there are 5 buckets failing. I mean, this is a very small account. So there are 5 buckets failing. Now, which one should I don't have time to address all 5. Now, I need to find out which bucket should be given more importance. So I would ideally like to give importance to a bucket which is often used. Now, with this findings, I cannot determine which bucket is frequently used by which team. I have to find that out. I have to get into CloudTrail and do it. So if I have a system where all the CloudTrail, the VPC flow log, the Security Hub findings, all of these logs, if they come into a single platform, then I can run queries. I can join different systems together, and I can write correlation queries. So correlation is a very important, a very frequently used terminology in the security world. Correlation rules will tell you the behavior pattern of a user, and that is a very good technique to investigate and to arrive at a conclusion as to what this particular user might have done, which had helped the user to compromise so and so bucket or so and so database. So that's the power of correlation. having a sequence. How do we build a sequence of events? How do we build a sequence of activities across different systems in one single window? So that's the power of security lake. Now with security lake, we are having all of these various logs, and not only AWS logs. Even if you have external logs, right? So if you are using a Splunk or a ArcSight, you can bring in those logs as well. And it doesn't stop there. Even if you have some application logs which are outside AWS environment, it could even be at on-prem. Even those logs can be brought in into security lake. And how this is made possible is in the API world. If you remember, the APIs which talk to each other, those APIs as such could have been developed in Java or in C# or Node.js. That's up to the API, right? So each of them write their APIs in their own language. But how they are able to communicate to each other, the parameters which they send and receive are in certain format. They are in REST API format. They are JSON. So that's a common language which APIs speak. Similarly, if you want to ingest logs from any system, as long as it's following a protocol called OCSF. OCSF is an open source framework. It's called Open Cyber Security Framework. So as long as the systems, the logs are following the OCSF standard, you will be able to ingest into security lake. So that's the power of this lake. And there are some partners, like when I say partner, third party products who have their logs already in OCSF format. Now, when we start working, practically speaking, our customers, organizations will have their own applications which will not be OCSF ready. So you can write a utility to convert the log format of these applications into OCSF, and you can ingest into a security lake. So that's what security lake is about. I had configured it to show you. Just a second. Yeah. Okay. There is a specific way in which security lake has to be set up. So you need to have AWS organizations. So ideally speaking, there should be an account where the security lake has to be created. So in AWS organizations, you have the master account and then you have the member account. So when you enable security lake in the master account, which is the very first step, it will ask you which account you want security lake to be an administrator. So you cannot have security lake in the master account. So you have to give the number of the account where you want security lake to be running. So I have another account called audit account, and this is a member account in my organizations, and this is the account where security lake is running. So the setup is quite simple. You need to first get into AWS organizations, enable security lake, decide which account you want security lake to be running, give that account number, and then behind the scene it will do the magic. So it will create tables. So you can see here, these are the sources: CloudTrail, VPC, flow logs, Route 53, and Security Hub findings. And this will come, like you can choose which region, right? So you can decide whether Sydney, Mumbai, not yet, security lake is not yet available. So that's why I created in Sydney. So the CloudTrail from all of your organization, from all the accounts across Sydney region, will get deposited in security lake. Similarly, flow logs, Route 53, and Security Hub findings. And these are the subscribers. Now, where will you see these logs? that's it. You will see it in Athena. So that's where you will be able to see these data as tables in Athena. So this is already in Athena. So it has created a database by this name. It's called Security Lake Glue DB, and these are the tables for each of the entities that you saw here. So there is a separate table for CloudTrail, separate table for VPC Flowlog, Route 53, and so on, right? And if you remember, we were doing some slicing and dicing in the CloudTrail. So here you will have the same thing, but here it's a bit different. The column names are a bit different, and it will give you a lot more extra information in the CloudTrail. And the power of having these tables is I can write joint queries. So if you remember, I was telling you in Security Hub, it's showing 5 buckets as well as vulnerable. They are deviating. Which one should I prioritize? Now, I can write a query to check among the vulnerable buckets, what are the buckets which are most commonly read, or what are the buckets to which people commonly do a write operation. So get object and put object, these are the APIs. So I can join the Security Hub findings table along with CloudTrail table, and I can write a join query which will give me a single view. Within a single query, I will be able to find out, and I can prioritize that way. Okay, so I had some queries written. Okay. So vulnerable S3 buckets, right? So here, if you look here, I'm first selecting records from CloudTrail, and I'm joining records from CloudTrail with records in Security Hub. So I can share these queries with you. Maybe I can put it in the GitHub. So here, the trick is in CloudTrail, you will have a column called resources, and this is the common column. So even in Security Hub findings, you will have a resources column. So this is the common column. So you can do an inner join between these two columns, and you will be able to derive correlations through it. So that's the capability of Security Link. So we will have a detailed demo and session on it. I will bring all the pre-written queries, and by that time I will also have sufficient data collected in the Security Lake, and I think that should be good enough to have a good session. Okay, so that's all I had for today.
Awesome. Thanks, Raji. I think it was really interesting to see in a short period of time you were able to pull too much of demos and connect the dots, right? I personally know it's not that easy to connect all of these dots, get the data out, and show something meaningful end to end, right? So thank you so much. Really appreciate once again for putting out that effort. Again, yeah, for all the folks, I think what the code and queries Raji was presenting, I've shared her GitHub repo link, the same repo she presented yesterday, the Lambda code. So I'll put again in the chat. If you don't, I'm flashing on the screen. So if you don't have it, let me know again. I'll share it with you, or you can refer to that GitHub link, right? We'll take a 2 minutes quick pause. If you have any questions for Raji, you can put it in the chat. She'll be happy to answer. If not, then we'll start with our quiz for today's session. So the GitHub repo link I'm flashing on the screen. In the meantime, I'll go ahead and share my screen. for the quiz. Again, feel free if you have any questions, please put it in the chat. If not, then we will start with the quiz. I'm giving the link of the quiz. I can see most of the people are already there. There are 10 folks who are already there. So just we'll wait for 2 minutes for the folks to join, and then we'll start with the quiz for today's session. If you have joined the quiz, please give me a yes, quick yes in the chat that you're able to log in into the quiz portal. Cool. I see a few yes from the folks, which means I think they are good to go. So I'll bring up the first question. I hope all guys are ready and everyone on the screen. Let me spin up the first question for today's session. Here comes the first question on the screen. Which phase of incident response comes under guard duty? Which phase of incident response comes under guard duty? Option 1, preparation. Option 2, detection. Option 3, analysis. Option 4, recovery. Which phase of incident response comes under guard duty? Let's see who gives the right answer for this one. And the right answer is detection. As we can see, most of the participants have given the right answer. And Akhilan stands at first, Sagnik as second, and JP as third. Still, there are 9 questions to go. Let me bring up the next question, question number 2. A security engineer has been asked to continuously monitor the company's AWS account using automated compliance check based on best practices. How can the security engineer accomplish this using AWS services? I think this was an interesting question. If I recap again, a security engineer has been asked to continuously monitor the company's AWS account using automated way for the best practice. What AWS service it will use to accomplish it? And the right answer is config plus security hub. Interestingly, again, most of the participants have given the right answer. And if we see the leaderboards remains the same, there is no change to it. Let's get the third question for today's quiz. Which AWS service can be used to generate a documentation required by various compliance standards such as PCI DSS level 1 for handling the credit card data? Which AWS service will help you for the documentation required for various compliance standards? I think this topic or this question has been covered up multiple times throughout the series. Option 1, artifact. Option 2, document DB. Option 3, print the compliance summary report. Option 4, secret manager. And the right answer is artifact. So 6 participants have given the right answer. The right answer is artifact. And we see a change in the dashboard. Akhilan's at the top, JP as second, and Arvind as third, Prasanna as fourth. Let's pin up the fourth question for today's quiz. An EC2 instance running a WordPress site keeps getting hacked even though you restore this several times and you patch the WordPress. Which AWS service can help you to detect and prevent further attacks? An EC2 instance running a WordPress site getting hacked frequently even after you have restored the server and patched the WordPress. Which AWS service can help you detect and prevent further attacks? CloudWatch, GuardDuty, Shield, Security Advisor. And the right answer is GuardDuty. 6 participants have given the right answer. GuardDuty is the right answer. And here we see a change in the dashboard. JP moves at the top, Akhilan as second, and Arvind as third, Prasanna as fourth. Let's move to the fifth question. Here comes the fifth question. To comply with auditing requirement of some compliance standard, which AWS tool can be enabled to maintain audit logs of access and change to your infrastructure? I think this point was covered by Raji during her talk. To comply with auditing requirements of some compliance standard, which AWS tool can be enabled to maintain and audit logs of access and change to your infrastructure? CloudTrail, CloudWatch, GuardDuty, AWS audit and compliance tool. And the right answer is CloudTrail. And we see almost all everyone has given the right answer, and the leaderboard remains the same. There is no change to it. Let me bring up the sixth question for today. Amazon GuardDuty service is used for automated threat response. Amazon GuardDuty service is used for automated threat response. Is it true? Is it false? And simple answer. Amazon GuardDuty is used for automated threat response. Let's see who gives the right answer for this. And the right answer for this one is false. And we see a change in the dashboard, leadership dashboard. Akhilan moves at the top, Prasanna is second, and JP is third, Arvind is fourth. Let's bring up the seventh question for today's quiz. Last 4 questions to go. Which AWS service makes it easy to detect and report unexpected and potential malicious activity in your AWS environment? Which AWS service makes it easy to detect and report unexpected and potential malicious activity in your AWS environment? Option A, Shield. Option B, Inspector. Option C, GuardDuty. Option 4, WEF. This question is close to the riddle which Raji presented. The right answer is GuardDuty. And 8 participants have given the right answer. There is no change in the leaderboard. It still remains the same. Let's bring up the 8th question. Last 3 questions to go. Which AWS service makes it easy for you to easily rotate, manage, retrieve database credentials, API keys, and other secrets? A very simple question. Which AWS service makes it easy for you to easily rotate, manage, and retrieve database credentials, API keys, and other secrets? Option AWS WEF, AWS Secret Store, AWS Secrets Manager, and AWS Shield. WEF, Secret Store, Secret Managers, Shield. And the right answer everyone gave is Secret Manager. And we see no change in the dashboard. Last 2 questions for today's quiz. Which of the following can a customer use to enable single sign-on to the AWS console? Again, a simple one. Which of the following can a customer use to enable single sign-on to the AWS console? AWS Connect, AWS Single Sign-On, Amazon Pinpoint, Amazon Recognition. Which of the following can a customer use to enable single sign-on to the AWS console? Connect, Single Sign-On, Pinpoint, Recognition. And the right answer is AWS Single Sign-On. And we see no change. Akhilan at the top, Prasanna at second, and JP as third, Arvind as fourth. The last question for today's quiz, and let's see who remains at the top of the leaderboard. Here comes the last question for today's quiz. What AWS service keeps a record of who is interacting with your AWS account? What AWS service keep a record of who is interacting with your AWS account? AWS CloudTrail, AWS Config, AWS CloudWatch, AWS Secret Manager. What AWS service keeps a record of who is interacting with your AWS account? And the right answer to is AWS CloudTrail. And we see 8 participants have given the right answer to it. Let me end the quiz to bring up the leaderboard. And the leaderboard is Akhilan at the top. We had total 26 participants today. Akhilan remains at the top. Prasanna remains at the second place, and JP at the third. So congratulations to all the winners, and as well as I want to bring up the leaderboard for the tournament also, so you can have a quick glance to it. So as we see, Arvind remains at the top of the tournament. There are 2 to 3 more quests to go, including our finale. So still Arvind remains at the top, Akhilan as the second, and Prasanna third, and JP fourth. This is the entire tournament dashboard, which is visible. You can log in and you can see in the tournament. So congratulations to all the winners for today's quiz, as well as to the winners for the tournament. Keep continuing participating for the remaining sessions and get some interesting awards in the finale session. So that's what I had from today's session. Again, if you have any question, any queries for Raji or for me, please let us know. We'll be here. And if not, then we'll be back again next week with our interesting sessions, which is around the networking security, the last layer for our security event that we'll cover in the next week. So again, if you have any questions, we are here. If not, thank you so much for joining today's session. Thank you, Raji, for being our speaker today.
Sanjit, if I can take 1 minute. Yeah.
Sure.
So the Lambda, which I was tying up with guard duty, it was behaving correct. I just want to go over it again. I was overestimating my Lambda. Okay. So it was, I'll just take that case again and clarify it. Okay. So let me just share my screen. So the Lambda has no issues. It's only that the sequence. Okay, so the scenario was we have guard duty, we have this list. You can see my screen, right? No, it's
Yes.
not yet come up.
Yeah, I think it should be live now.
Okay, yeah. So the sequence was if somebody is tampering either of these URL, the config rule should become non-compliant. So we saw that happening, but the Lambda will not do any remediation. So it's not bringing guard duty back to normal. That's capability I did not add in the Lambda. So it was doing the expected behavior. So we had this URL changed to ABC list, which is not a valid list, and config reports it as non-compliant, which is again the expected behavior. Now, the moment config tells you that the rule has become non-compliant, this becomes non-compliant, right? So the moment it tells you that it is non-compliant, the team who is responsible will come to know of this alert, and then they will find out which account, which region it is non-compliant, and then they will go to guard duty and they will put the right URL. So the right URL is this one, trusted IP list. I'm just putting that here. And when this is updated, the compliance rule will automatically turn to compliant. It will turn to, that things are fine. So after a few seconds, when I reevaluate this rule, the status will turn back to compliant. So there's no issue in the Lambda code, so people can download. Yeah. So that's what I wanted to tell you.
Awesome.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you so much, Raji.
Sure.
So yeah, guys, I think as we see, again, for the folks who are watching this video on demand basis, couldn't make it to the live stream and watching on demand, please feel free to post your question in the form of a comments. Raji, and I'll make sure that we answer all of your comments. As well as she is part of our Slack user group Mumbai channel too. So do join, ask questions. I'll share all the presentations. We are in process of compiling the presentations as of now. So we will be sharing all the presentations before our finale session. But we'll be only able to share the presentation over the email. And for that, you have to register to this entire boot camp or the event so we can have your details and we can share. So if you haven't covered up or if you haven't registered to this event, please do it so we have your details and we can share with that. I think there is one question: is inspector going to be covered also? Prasanna, stay tuned for the upcoming sessions. I am pretty sure there would be something lined up from our speakers who are scheduled for the future session. So I hope inspector would be the case. If not, then we'll make sure that there is a small time in the finale session itself where we cover up this service. So we'll make sure that this is covered up before is a part of our event. So if there is any other questions, please put in the chat, Raji, and I will be happy to answer it. And again, I'll also share our link for the playlist in case if you have missed any of your sessions, which you're unable to watch, or I mean, you missed it or some other thing, you can go here. This is a playlist link. All the sessions recording, including the current one, once the session ends, will be uploaded to this playlist link. So you can save this link handy with you and share with all of your other colleagues who have been missed or couldn't join today. All of our sessions will be recorded and stored in this particular playlist for an on-demand. So I see there is no question. So that's all today from Raji and me. Thank you so much once again for joining. Stay tuned for our next week session. I'll see you at the next week. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.